Hey everyone, this is Bunny. Today we're going to settle in for a nice, slow, thoughtful paint and talk while I work on some scattered terrain plants on the background. Nothing fancy, nothing that needs a lot of commentary. They're not even particularly difficult to paint. Just something peaceful to keep my hands busy while we dive into a topic I absolutely love. We're going to talk about why human beings tell stories, and specifically, why every Dungeons & Dragons player becomes a myth maker without even realizing it. This one is all heart, all reflection, all philosophy. The kind of long, meditative chant that pairs perfectly with some quiet painting time. So get cozy, grab a drink, maybe paint along if you want, and let's explore the ancient magic of storytelling together. Storytelling is our oldest art form. Long before we built cities or wrote books or painted miniatures or invented the rules of any game, we told stories. We gathered around fires, caves, hearths, and camp circles, and we shared tales about the world, about each other, about what frightens us, about what inspires us, and about what we hoped was true. Storytelling existed before agriculture, before metalworking, before anything that we would now call civilization. In many ways, it's the foundation everything else was built on. It is woven into our bones. When I picture those early storytellers, I always imagine someone tending the fire while they speak, hands moving almost without thinking, adding wood, poking at coals, maybe carving a little piece of bone or wood while they talk. The fire crackles. Someone laughs. Someone else leans in closer, and the story wraps around them like a blanket. That scene is so ancient and yet so familiar because we're still doing it. We've traded the campfire for a kitchen table or a Discord call, and the carved bone for polyhedral dice or a paintbrush. But the energy is the same. One person starts, someone else adds a detail, someone contradicts them, everyone laughs, and before you know it, a simple moment has turned into a legend that's going to be retold for years to come. Storytelling has never really been about the tools we use. It's always been about that shared focus, that feeling of, we're all here together, experiencing this thing at the same time. Even now, with all the technologies we've invented, all the entertainment we've created, all the ways we record information, the human brain is still wired for story. It is how we understand the world. It is how we organize our thoughts. It is how we take the chaos of experience and craft it into something meaningful. And when you sit at a D&D table or even just paint in preparation for your upcoming session, you're engaging directly with that ancient instinct. You're participating in something timeless, something eternal. It's almost funny in a way because we live in a time when we are surrounded by more stories than ever before. We can stream shows on demand and scroll through endless social media feeds, listen to podcasts all day long, binge actual play campaigns, read books on tiny screens that we keep in our pockets. You would think that would satisfy whatever storytelling hunger we have, but it usually doesn't. If anything, it just makes the craving sharper. What most of us are missing isn't access to stories. It's participating in them. It's part of why games like D&D feel so powerful and so important. They slow everything down. They invite you to stop scrolling, to sit with a handful of other humans and build something together in real time instead of just consuming something that someone else has already made. It turns storytelling from a passive experience into an active craft, something you're shaping with every word you speak and every decision you make at the table. What amazes me is that storytelling doesn't have to be deliberate. It doesn't require planning or conscious effort. It just happens. Give a child a handful of toys, and within minutes they're telling a story. Give an adult a dream they can't quite explain, and they'll turn it into a narrative. Ask someone to describe their day, and they will turn events into a sequence, plot, a full-blown story. Even when we gossip or complain or laugh about something that happened to us, we're practicing storytelling. It's involuntary. It's like breathing. In Dungeons and Dragons, this instinct takes on a special shape because the stories aren't simply being told. They're being lived, explored. They're being improvised. They're being shaped moment by moment through decisions, dice rolls, and character choices. And because the story is shared among a group of people, something magical happens. Everyone becomes a storyteller, and everyone becomes the audience. The story gets woven collaboratively, like threads twisting into a tapestry no one person could have created alone. It requires buy-in from everyone to work. That collaborative nature is part of what makes D&D so mythic. Myth, after all, wasn't created by individuals. It was created by communities. These were tales repeated, reshaped, retold across generations. No single author wrote them. They grew organically, like living things. And in D&D, the shared story grows in much the same way. Every player contributes. Every player adds meaning. Every player leaves their signature on the myth. But why do we tell stories in the first place? What is it about narrative that feels so necessary, so natural, so human? One answer is that stories help us make sense of the world. Life is messy. Life is unpredictable. Life doesn't always give us closure or justice or structure or satisfying arcs. But stories do. In stories, actions have meaning. Choices lead somewhere. Themes emerge. Arcs unfold. Stories give us a sense of order, even if only temporarily, in a world that constantly shifts beneath our feet. When we tell stories, we're not just entertaining ourselves. We're building patterns out of chaos. We're searching for truth inside uncertainty. Another answer lies in emotion. Stories let us feel deeply without risk. When we hear a sad story, we grieve. When we hear a triumphant story, we celebrate. When we listen to a tale of bravery, we feel courage stir in our own hearts. Fictional experiences can produce real emotional responses because our brains treat stories as simulations of reality. They let us practice being human in ways that are safe but meaningful. In D&D, this emotional dimension is amplified. Players form attachments to their characters. They feel tension during battles. They experience fear, hope, loss, triumph, and surprise. These emotions are real, even if the events causing them are not. And because you're sharing those emotions with other people, you're laughing together, panicking together, hopefully problem-solving together. But because you're doing those things together, the feelings become even stronger. They become communal. They turn into memories. If you've ever lost a character, you know exactly how real those emotions can feel. On paper, it's just hit points dropping to 0 and some failed death saves. But in your chest, it's grief. It's that hollow little ache that lingers the next day when you think, wow, we're really not going to see them walk into another tavern ever again. On the flip side, when something goes spectacularly right, when the dice line up, and someone pulls off an absolutely ridiculous plan that should not have worked, but somehow did, the joy at the table is just as real. People shout, stand up, high five, type in all caps in the chat, multiple times. Your heart races. Maybe your hands shake. You remember that moment the same way you remember a big win in real life, because as far as your nervous system is concerned, it was one. The blend of safety and intensity is exactly where myth likes to live. In that liminal space where you know you're just playing a game, but some quiet, honest part of you knows that the feelings it stirred up are going to stay with you for a long time. That's the moment when a campaign becomes a myth. Think about the stories D&D players tell after a session or a campaign ends. They talk about characters as if they were real people. Moments from the game become treasured legends. Remember when the cleric accidentally set fire to the tavern? Oops. Remember the time the paladin saved us all with a single lucky roll? Remember the moment our rogue finally forgave the wizard and everyone just moved on? These aren't just anecdotes. They're shared mythology, shared stories. And what's interesting is that these stories often grow in the retelling. They expand, they deepen. Details shift slightly. Tension gets heightened. Humor gets sharpened. Meaning gets layered in. Just like ancient myths, D&D stories evolve as they're told and retold. They become symbolic. They become representative. They become emotionally true, even if the exact details blur over time. This brings us to one of the most important reasons humans tell stories: to understand ourselves. Characters in D&D aren't random creations. They reflect pieces of the player who made them. Sometimes those pieces are obvious. A shy person plays a confident character. A stressed person plays a chaotic character. A gentle person plays a fierce character. Sometimes those pieces are subconscious. Unresolved emotions, unspoken hopes, unexplored fears. A character's arc often mirrors the player's inner landscape, whether the player intended that or not. Now, some players do this very intentionally. They sit down with a notebook and an online builder and think, okay, what part of me do I want to explore this time? Maybe they're working through a fear of failure, so they make a character who is absolutely convinced they're destined for greatness. Maybe they grew up feeling invisible, so they build someone loud and glamorous who demands to be noticed. Other players swear they're just picking whatever seems fun. A chaotic neutral disaster bard, a grumpy cleric, a nervous and incompetent paladin. But if you follow that character's journey over months of play, patterns start to emerge. You can see the questions that players keep circling back to, the themes they're quietly untangling at the table without ever naming them out loud. Sometimes you can even watch someone answer the same question 3 or 4 different ways across different campaigns. Like they're turning a gem in their hand to see how it catches the light from every angle. And in a safe fictional setting, players get to explore these pieces honestly. They get to experiment with identity and morality, belief and courage, vulnerability and power. They get to test out versions of themselves they've never even dared to express. They get to be bold or flawed, strange or powerful, broken or healing. They get to become something and someone new. This is the heart of myth-making. Not the monsters or the gods or the heroics, but the emotional truth beneath it all. Myth is a way of exploring what it means to be human through symbolic language. And D&D gives players that language. The magic, the quests, the conflicts, the companions, so that they can tell their own symbolic truths to the world, or maybe just to themselves. A barbarian's rage might represent suppressed anger. A cleric's crisis of faith might mirror spiritual doubt. A rogue's distrust might reflect past hurt. A wizard's hunger for knowledge might represent ambition or insecurity. A druid's connection to nature might reveal a longing for peace. These archetypes aren't accidental. They resonate because they speak to universal human experiences. Most of the time, no one sits down and says, yes, this barbarian will be my vessel for working through intergenerational anger. Or, this cleric exists so I can unpack my complicated feelings about belief and faith. It's subtler than that. It shows up in the choices you make when no one is pressuring you, in the way you describe your character's reactions, in the parts of their backstory you feel drawn to flesh out. Myth has always worked this way. It gives us distance. It lets us talk about ourselves without saying, this is me. Instead, we say, this is a hero, or this is a monster, or this is a god who made a mistake. And somehow that little bit of space makes honesty easier. D&D just happens to give you a flexible, playful framework to do the same thing, one session at a time. And that's why players become myth makers. Because the stories they create, even if they seem small or silly on the surface, are actually deep explorations of meaning. They are emotional metaphors. They are personal truths in fantastical forms. Now let's talk about the shared aspect of storytelling. Because humans need connection. We pretend we don't, but we need to feel understood. We need to feel like we belong somewhere. Stories create that sense of belonging. When we tell someone a story about our life, we're not just communicating facts, we're offering them a glimpse of our inner world. Here's what I felt. Here's what mattered to me. And when someone listens, they're saying, I see you. I hear you. In D&D, that connection is constant. Players joke together. They strategize together. They comfort each other's characters. They cheer each other on. They share victories and failures. They build trust. And because the story belongs to everyone, the emotional investment is collective. That's why friendships often deepen through campaigns. Because the players aren't just talking, they're creating. They're imagining, they're feeling. They're doing it together. That is the essence of human bonding. There's also something ritualistic about D&D storytelling. Not in a formal religious sense, but in a way the sessions become a rhythm. You gather. You sit at the same table or join the same voice call. You roll the same dice. You speak in the same character voices. You participate in a shared structure. This repetition creates a sense of ritual, a comforting, grounding tradition that mirrors the ancient cycles of storytelling. Every session becomes a meeting at the fire. Every campaign becomes a saga. Every group becomes a tribe of storytellers. And what's even more wonderful is that the myth doesn't end when the campaign ends. Players carry those stories with them. They retell them years later. They reference them in other campaigns. They use them as inspiration for new characters or new stories. That continuity, that thread extending across time, is the hallmark of mythology. Myths survive because they are cherished. Now let's talk about the Dungeon Master. The DM is often seen as the primary storyteller, but in truth, they're more like the shaper of possibility. They create the world. They build the framework. They sow the seeds. But the players breathe life into everything. They take the DM's ideas and turn them into lived experience. A DM might craft a villain's tragic backstory, but the players decide whether that villain becomes an enemy, an ally, a rival, or a redeemed figure. The DM might design a dungeon with dangers and puzzles, but the players determine whether it becomes a disaster, a comedy of errors, or a heroic triumph. The DM offers the skeleton, the players add the flesh and the soul. This shared authorship is one of the rarest and most beautiful forms of storytelling. Most stories we consume, books and movies and TV shows, are created by someone else. D&D stories are created by us, by ordinary people with extraordinary imaginations. And that democratizes myth. It means anyone can be a storyteller. Anyone can create something meaningful. Anyone can craft a legend. And that brings us to one more reason humans tell stories: to leave something behind. Stories outlive us. Maybe not in the grand mythological sense, but in the personal sense. A story shared with friends becomes a memory. A character sheet tucked away becomes a reminder of who we were. A miniature painted for a campaign becomes a relic of that time in our lives. Stories become markers in the timeline of our existence. And the beautiful thing is, those stories don't have to be huge or world-shaking to matter. Most D&D campaigns are never going to be written down as novels or turned into shows. They live in group chats, in half-forgotten notes, in the way someone's eyes light up when they say, "Oh, that reminds me of this time, our party." Sometimes they get passed to new people too. A friend joins a later campaign and hears about the infamous dragon fight from the good old days, or a younger player at the table inherits an inside joke about a long-retired character. In that moment, they're stepping into a living tradition. They're joining a chain of storytelling that started long before they sat down to roll their first D20. And that might keep going long after this particular group stops playing together. In years to come, players might not remember the specific rules of the game. They might not recall every NPC name or every dungeon layout. But they will remember the emotions, the laughter, the tension, the triumphs, the moments when the table went silent, the moments when everyone cheered, the moments that mattered. That is the power of storytelling. That is the power of myth. That is the power of Dungeons and Dragons. And even these little terrain plants I'm painting in the background, simple, unremarkable, quiet, they're part of the story too. They may sit unnoticed on a battle map, but they help create the world where the myth unfolds. They are part of the texture, the atmosphere, the grounding that makes the story feel real. And that's the lesson of mythology. Even the small things matter. Even the tiny details contribute to the whole. The same thing is true for all the other little physical things that gather around a game. The chipped mug you always drink from on session nights. The notebook with smeared pencil maps and crossed out ideas. The one set of dice you swear is blessed, and the other set you jokingly threaten to put in dice jail. They're all tiny anchors for memory. Years later, you can pick up a single miniature or a single D20 and feel an entire campaign rush back at you. You remember who you were playing with then, what was going on in your life, what you were escaping from or leaning toward. That's myth too. Not just the story in the fiction, but the story of you, the player, and the season of your life that wrapped itself around that game. Storytelling is not about perfection. It's not about structure or grammar or fancy techniques. It's about meaning. It's about emotion. It's about connection. It's about exploring the human experience through metaphor. And that is why we tell stories. Because stories make us feel alive. Because stories help us understand ourselves. Because stories let us connect with others. Because stories allow us to explore courage, hope, love, fear, ambition, loss, and triumph in a safe and imaginative space. Because stories shape us. And because we, in turn, shape stories. Every D&D player, whether they know it or not, is a myth maker. Every campaign is a legend. Every session is a ritual. Every character is a symbol. Every story is a truth told through fantasy. That's the beauty of it. That's the magic. That's the reason D&D resonates so deeply for so many people around the world. Through many languages, in many countries, and across so many time zones, especially for our current campaign. We just enjoy the story. We enjoy the myth. And we craft all of it. Now, as I'm wrapping up painting these funny little plants that are going to feature in our upcoming campaign, and I do mean feature, I have mimic versions of all of them, I just can't help but reflect on the many years I've been playing Dungeons & Dragons, the many myths we've created, the many ideas we've embraced, and the ones we've let go, the way the game has changed over the years, and the way it stayed the same, the friends we've made, and the ones who've had to move on. All of it matters. At least to us. I hope that matters to you too. I hope the friendships and stories you've told along the way always have value to you. That's about it for today. If you've ever had a character moment or a campaign story that stuck with you long after the game ended, leave a comment down below. I really love hearing your stories. They're some of my absolute favorites. D&D, Dungeons & Dragons is nothing without community. So pop in those comments and share your own stories, your own myths. I do hope you'll be back with us next time, because we are coming back each week. At least that's the plan for now. Bye!